This is a podcast from soof.co.uk. Hello, I'm Patrick Downs. This is all about film, whether it be Blu-ray, DVD or streaming. This is Bring the Film. Imagine the transformative, exhilarating and uplifting journey to womanhood of a rebel and a misfit, one of the world's most famous, enigmatic and provocative writers who died too soon at the age of 30. This is Emily.
Look! It does like the rain. The feel of it, the sound of it, the smell of it. From now on, we shall call her Miss Celia Amelia.
I'm a fool.
No, you're not.
I'd rather be a fool than not live at all. You're an embarrassment to us. Do you know what they call you in the village?
Stop it, Charlotte.
No. They call you the strange one. And you are. Mother would be ashamed to see who you've become. Every time I come home, I see more and more what you are becoming. I won't let you drag me down, I won't!
Starring Emma Mackey, Oliver Jackson-Cohen, Fionn Whitehead, Adrian Dunbar, Alexandra Dowling, Amelia Gething and Frances O'Connor. And to Emma Mackey, who plays Emily Brontë, tell us about the combination of fact and fiction within this film.
What's really interesting is that actually for the first time we're faced with a story with an intertwining of both the imaginative world that Emily Brontë created in her book and real elements of her life. And I think that that's a really beautiful and quite interesting thing to do. Like, the Brontë family is shrouded in mystery and they're sort of untouchable. They're sort of the untouchable sisters, especially Emily. She's called the Sphinx of English literature. So she is kind of this untouchable, mysterious figure. What I do like is that we're sort of fleshing her out. We're giving her a character, we're giving her a personality, and we're giving her a voice and making her into a living, breathing person. I think that when people watch the film, they'll have escaped for 2 hours, and there's definitely a world that is created.
And Emily Bronte's character arc within the film.
She's a very observant girl, and she's sort of seeking her father's approval and doesn't really know what her place in the family is and what her place in the world is yet. But she's very imaginative and curious and wants to tell all these stories. And then over the course of time frame in the film, we see her evolve and we see her develop relationships with her brother and Mr. Weightman, and her relationships with her sister evolve and change, and her relationship with herself and her imagination and her confidence. And so that's kind of what we observe as her trajectory and her evolution into a woman, up until the point where she writes Wuthering Heights.
So tell me more about studying at the University of Leeds, and then you've returned to Yorkshire.
I went to uni in Leeds, so Yorkshire was my first UK home, and so it's been really nice coming back here, and also just being in the middle of nowhere has been really lovely. Being in nature and surrounded by sheep and mountains and hills has been rather wonderful. I really enjoy it, and I've really enjoyed it, and it feels like a kind of a full circle moment.
Oliver Jackson-Cohen plays William Weightman, but tell us more about working with Frances O'Connor, the writer-director.
Frances is an incredible actor, and so when you work with a director who knows acting so well, there's a kind of an immediate trust. I think Frances, this idea has been in her head for the past 10 years. She's over every single scene. She knows every single scene inside out. There's no fat on the script. It's a very, very kind of tight script. And so she's got so much knowledge, and she's got so much, she feels so much about how it's been written, and I think you definitely feel that on the page. So it's been a kind of an amazing experience working with Frances.
Tell me more about how your character shapes the story seen in this film.
He comes in to Haworth and changes the dynamic there, and I think everyone gets quite excited about him, specifically the Brontë sisters. And apart from Emily, as time goes on, he's asked to teach Emily French. So they have these series of French lessons, and they kind of butt heads quite a lot. And there's this incredible tension that Frances plays with between the two of them that eventually blossoms into a relationship. And then what that means, the cost of what that is to both of them, and the fact that they are having this relationship that is not right in the eyes of God and is not right in the eyes of society. And so it creates this very, very interesting dynamic that they both sort of floating through.
Fionn Whitehead plays Branwell Brontë, but tell me more about the character arc of Branwell and how you discussed it with Frances O'Connor, the writer-director of this film.
Well, me and Frances talked a lot about how vibrant he is in the beginning, how important it was to play him as this very soulful, joyful young guy who's really keen on just sort of having a good time and making sure that everyone else has a good time with him. But the sort of background noise to that we talked about a lot as well was the fact that he is recovering massively from the loss of his mother and from his two older sisters, and how that's something that kind of sits with him a lot. And you know, the Brontes never really talk about it, and I think that kind of affects him a lot later in life, that he doesn't deal with any of the feelings that come up around that. So there's this sort of constant need to be in motion all the time and to be moving and to never sort of be still.
What kind of research did you do for this role?
In order to research for Bramwell, I bought a massive book full of his poems and his stories and sort of used that for reference. I bought and read Byron, Don Juan, which Branwell was massively influenced by, and is very influenced by those kinds of writers. And then it was more a case of looking into the effects of addiction, specifically alcohol and opiates, because he was a known alcoholic and an opium addict, and then it was sort of thinking about that aspect of the character and his sort of slow deterioration and kind of descent into full-blown addiction.
And finally, what was it like filming in Yorkshire?
I love this part of the UK, I always have. I used to come here a lot when I was a kid. We had sort of family friends all around Yorkshire. I've always loved it around here. There's something so specific about the scenery here that you really can't replicate anywhere else. I've never been anywhere that has the kind of scenery. The moors and the dales and the Lake District and kind of everywhere around here is just so raw and really, really sometimes breathtakingly beautiful.
This isn't a pond, Miss Brontë. I can hear it.
What is it?
It's the sea.
The sea?
Yeah. Full of its sea creatures and deep oceans. Now, where would you want to leave the sea?
Is that what the sea sounds like?
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Starring Emma Mackey, Oliver Jackson-Cohen, Fionn Whitehead, Adrian Dunbar, Alexandra Dowling, Amelia Gething, and Francis O'Connor. Adrian Dunbar plays Patrick Brontë, but what was it like working with such a fantastic young cast?
The other casts are incredible, really. I mean, I don't think I've ever been, or very rarely been, in a cast of particularly, young actors who are just all of such a incredible standard. Really, really, collectively, you can just see them all going on to do wonderful things in their careers and in their lives, and it's a real privilege to be amongst them. I've had a fabulous time with them. Really lovely people and really wonderful professionals. Can't speak highly enough of them.
And what about how beautiful Yorkshire is?
I have to say that I didn't know Yorkshire before. I'd heard about it. I really didn't have it in my head. I'd worked with Anna Maxwell Martin, who kept reminding me that Yorkshire was quite big and made up of several counties in one county. But I didn't really realise how big or how diverse it was. The Dales, where we are, where the house was, that the location was just extraordinary. It really is a beautiful, beautiful part of the world. My whole idea of Yorkshire as being these kind of dark northern industrial revolution, towns, and that kind of notion of it all is gone. And I now the Yorkshire I see is, rolling countryside and forests and stone walls, and very nice.
Alexandra Dowling plays Charlotte Brontë, but what's about the relationship between Charlotte and Emily?
Charlotte is constantly trying to suppress her kind of wilder, darker nature, and Emily's much more okay with it, and especially as the film goes on, embracing of it. And I think it was that key in that really helped me understand this relationship of what Francis has written as Charlotte as really trying to be out in the world, and also contextualizing it with a bit of research of what was expected of Victorian women at that time, how bold and brave their books really were. And she didn't just end up there. There's still a lot of mystery around the relationship, but I think Francis's script really held the complexity of that sibling rivalry and mistrust, but also deep love and adoration and affection.
So what kind of books and letters have you read for research of this role?
There's so many books to read. The ones I really relied on was actually a book of Charlotte's letters to Ellen Nussey, because you just got so much of her private thoughts and a lot of her personality comes through in those letters, and a side of Charlotte I hadn't really thought about or known about. And but there was also a great book by Lucasta Miller called The Brontë Myth, and a biography by Claire Harmon that I dipped into. So yeah, and then obviously the books themselves, Wuthering Heights and Jane Eyre and the poetry. There's a lot to get into.
Amelia Gething plays Anne Brontë, but what was it like playing this role?
When I approached playing Anne, I tried to take into consideration obviously what she was like as a real person. So when I first did my research for it, a lot of things came up that she was like the kind of timid, calm, boring one of the three. And then when I did a little bit more research, actually reading some of her poems and her books, I found out that she was like so much more than that. She's like funny and she's really clever and smart. So I tried to incorporate a lot of that into it, but I think her main role in the film and Francis's interpretation of it all is like Anne is Emily's friend and her like confidant, and she's there to kind of keep Emily's peace and be there for her as like not just a sister but like as a friend as well.
Frances O'Connor is the writer-director of this film, but what was it like visiting Yorkshire and being inspired to write Emily?
I took the opportunity to go up to Yorkshire for the first time and visit Haworth, and it was so evocative up there, and I walked out in the moors and I thought, oh, I'd love to write something one day. And I just kind of forgot about it for ages, and just kind of followed my path as an actress for a long time. And then eventually I really wanted to write and start telling my own stories. And so I kind of came back to the idea of this. And there were certain things in Emily's life that I also felt I identified with happening in mine, or certain things that I think thematically are kind of part of Wuthering Heights and her life that I also relate to. And I think a lot of women would relate to. So the kind of idea came from that. Half her life, half Wuthering Heights, and a little bit of my life.
And this is your first film. What was it like directing it?
I knew I wanted to write it, and I've always wanted to maybe try directing. And then, really the last kind of 5 years, I've really felt this yearning to kind of expand beyond being an actor and like tell my whole story. So it kind of coincided at the same time. I thought, no, I'm going to ask whether I can direct it. And then the producers were into it. And it also kind of coincided with like the Me Too movement happening and a lot of other women getting an opportunity to direct, whereas like maybe 5 years ago I wouldn't have had that opportunity.
All About the Life of Emily Brontë. It's Emily, and it's available now. And with that, thanks for checking me out on the Bring the Film podcast today. I'm Patrick Downs, and you can keep in touch across Twitter at I'm Patrick Downs, also on Instagram or facebook.com/officialpoptart. And there's also the website soof.co.uk. This is a podcast from soof.co.uk.